Okay. My name is Kiran Shandhi. My name is spelled Kiran. Last name Sondhi. I will be going through the process of dissecting a pumpkin to explain human biology. And to begin with, I'm going to start by asking the question, what are the steps for the scientific method? So, I've got my notes over here. I hope you don't mind. And, maybe you didn't notice that. And I'd like to point out that 30% of the American population is not fully engaged in what they do. It's kind of sad. Anyway, so what are the scientific methods? You can observe that I've already started to dissect this pumpkin. The tools we'll be using today are chopsticks, 2 types, glass, and wood. The use of chopsticks in the scientific community should be better explored. I think that the Chinese have a great way of practicing slowing down and practicing using methods that the American population could definitely learn from. This includes, when we use chopsticks, it slows us down when we're eating so that we don't eat things too fast, which is really important because when we eat too fast, our digestive system doesn't process the food as well because our teeth, our dental cavities are chewing, and in order to properly chew, based on Indian research back in India and Asia area, says that we need to eat about 20 to 30 times, 20 to 30 bites. That's really slow in order to properly digest our food and make use of our mouth. But most Americans eat so fast in our system that it kind of, it can mess up our digestive system. And that's okay, because also I'm American and I use chopsticks, so other people are probably using chopsticks, which means we're probably okay. But we have to be engaged and learn from everybody. Thus, chopsticks, knives, shredder, and scissor. We're looking at a pumpkin today in spirit of Halloween, so you can observe the work table. And, the job of a scientist is to continue asking questions and questioning what's happening, and then develop a hypothesis from that, make a prediction, and test the prediction, and then repeatedly make the new test and analyze and report. So, am I doing a test here? No. Am I making a hypothesis? No. What am I doing then? Well, I'm observing myself. I'm observing and understanding what it would take to be a doctor. What would it take to, put my hands inside of something. This is, this was living. This is a form of, these are cells that put this together. This went through photosynthesis just like me. So my hypothesis for this is, in learning the pumpkin and the process it took to make a pumpkin and taking it apart, I can better understand human biology, and I can learn to be better engaged with myself and my surroundings. So, to test this theory, and, to test this hypothesis, theory is something that's proven. To test this hypothesis, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissect this. I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to see how to practice my hands, and I'm going to see what I remember and what I don't remember. And the only page I'm going to be using in my book is this original piece that says organ systems, terms to evaluate, which is fact, opinion, bias, organisms, classifying organisms, and then organ systems. And I'm going to try to retain everything I've learned thus far from my teachers who are teaching through multimedia, in a sense. So what that means is through Zoom platforms or, electronics, which is removing our engagement. Technological advancements are always wonderful. However, we have to consider the effects on our, first of all, our retinas. So how is our eyes doing? How are, by sitting all day, what's that going to do to my full body? What is that going to do to my wrists? What is that going to do radioactive wise? What is that going to do to my lower back and my lower spine? And, when I sit there, who's going to pay for those medical bills? Because I haven't been working because I'm sitting there on a Zoom meeting talking to my teacher and losing my capability for emotional intelligence. Why? Because I'm disconnected from humans. You need to be attached to other human beings to understand your emotions better, which means by being on the Zoom meeting, we're detaching from each other, which is decreasing our emotional intelligence. And the reason I am using a pumpkin is because the color orange resonates with relationships, personal relationships, which is connected with the chakra that is placed right here. This area right here in our abdomen, where our stomach is, where women particularly carry the child in this area. This is the part that grows bigger because that's personal relationships. And women have a higher tendency to connect with people and have an emotional intelligence because our bodies are equipped to do so. So, with that said, my scientific theory is that in going through this, maybe I'll be able to teach other people the benefit of looking and learning from diverse populations so that we better ourselves. And I also started this and I started thinking, okay, well, what can I learn about myself in this process? And, if I'm going to be a doctor, then, I don't know for sure if I will, but if I am to be a doctor, I have to ask myself, am I going to be able to forgive myself if I hurt somebody? A lot of us want to be doctors, and you have to realize not everybody holds the same values. Not everybody sees things with the same eyes. And the beauty of the United States is freedom of speech. This is, after all, a democracy, and we have the right to say what we want. That said, fact, verify, no, and you can verify. You can check out the Declaration of Independence, which I will attach in this video, which tells you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if you're not happy, change it. I am not happy, so this is me changing it. Opinion based on personal judgment. As I go through some things, as I'm dissecting this, I may start rambling. I may start saying things that you don't agree with. And that's okay. I want you to disagree. Put it in the comments. Tell me you disagree. No, seriously, tell me to, just disagree with me. Yell at me. Say what you need to say, and then let's work through it together. That's how we heal. We do it together. And I know some of you may not like people of color. You may not, you may be white supremacists. You may, I don't care. You may like guns. I don't like guns. You may like, I don't know, eating fish or eating animals, whatever you like that I may not like. That's okay. And I had to come to terms with this. And, a lot of my fellow doctors who might be of people of color, you can't call yourself a healer if you can't look past what people don't agree with. I can't force a meat eater to become a vegetarian because I'm a vegetarian. It goes both ways, and people will always have their differences, and we have to learn that that's beautiful. So when it comes to opinion, it is my personal judgment. You have your personal judgment, I have mine, and that is okay. And the point about being doctors is you have to look past your personal judgment and accept people as the whole pumpkin that they are, bruised and all. And, maybe I'm biased, and again, bias is based on opinion. So, I'm swayed by experience. I'm not easily swayed by experiences. If I can forgive the worst of them, then I feel I've succeeded. And there are really bad ones out there. And I request that you guys learn to heal, because and let go of your power and let your need for power. I understand you want finances, you want to be in that place, but you know, there's beautiful cultures out there that are waiting to show you what real love is. So, credible info. I will be rewriting this backed by scientific evidence and sources, and then I will be sending it in for peer review. And if you are receiving this video through a personal email, then you may be a peer reviewer. And whether or not you want to review it or not, it's up to you. And again, I will be trying to translate this into writing as well, but I do not have a scribe, which we'll get into later. And also, with that suggestion, I think it'd be really cool if we created a more way for brown people to get into peer review, because a lot of this is whitewashed, and my current teachers are completely whitewashed. I am not seeing anything from people of color, and I think that that's very interesting. Anyways, you have to question what's credible. And so, with that said, let's look at the pumpkin. This, in a sense, is an organism. Okay, it's not, an animal, it's not a person, but it uses energy. It responded to the environment. You can see this maybe you can see this mark, or maybe not. See that mark on the side? That is a response to the environment. Similarly, how and where this is placed may have shaped why this is round. These can be different looking. The shape, if this was growing but it was laying on the side, it would be indented a bit more, which is a response to the environment. It's growing. It's, as we can see from all these seeds that I've already removed, it is reproducing. These are all seeds that could be planted for more pumpkins. And because it was made in the sun as every other organism, it's clear that this went through and underwent photosynthesis. And we'll go through how we know that in a second. And then, it has cells, and, this could be used as a great example for what a cell might look like. We could look into this and say, what cells make this up? How did it get to this point? How many electrons were used? How much ATP energy was in there? How much NADH transferred electrons to NAD? How many H's were removed from that NADH process in that cycle so that, this could form? What did that take? These are all questions we could ask. And again, this is just my first page from Human Biology 1. And then Human Biology 2, I learned a little bit more, not showing off. So, this isn't an atom. This is not an atom. This is a seed made up of atoms. If you can see that. It's made up of atoms. But atoms it's like a unit. If we were going into chemistry right now, it would be one unit. And you could add another atom. Now it's 2 units. And now you can add the third atom. And when they all come together inside of this larger organism, this becomes, let's say, the cell. It's the basic unit of life. So if this was my body, this was an example of my body, this cell makes up a molecule which grows. So this atom turns into a cell. The cell becomes a molecule, and the molecule grows to attach and becomes an organ, and then that becomes the full system. We'll have to break that apart a little bit more. Maybe even go look into the units a little more, which is each cell. But it goes cell, it goes atom, cell. Then we keep growing. And, atom, molecule, cell, tissue, organ, system, organism. This is the organism with the little lid on top. These are your systems. All those channels that are moving the photosynthesized energy into keeping these seeds strong. This is the tissue right here, and then it's connected to the system of gooey vines that gives those organs, sends the messages from this organ right here. See that? That's our organ area. And if we get even closer, this could be like tissue. And then this might be the cell or the molecule inside. Maybe like 3 of those. And then one single one is the atom. Now, when it comes to organisms, this might be more of, a species of pumpkins. There's also squash, and there's also, lots of different types of good old guys like this. But the classification of organisms goes from the kingdom, that's the top tier, and that's, fungi, animatae, monerae, plantae, all of that. And then it goes to phylum, which is vertebrae or invertebrate, and then classes, which are mammals. And then there's the carnivore herbivores. Then there's the family of bears and monkeys. And then there's the genus and the species. Those are put together unique and not shared. That might not make full sense, but there's ways to classify things and categorize them so it makes sense in the scientific field. And you'd want to go into more depth of those. Some people might focus on one type of kingdom or one class or one order or one family or genus or species. But as scientists, we have to understand that there are different ways to look at everything. There's so many ways to look at different things. And, some people get caught up in one topic. Some people get caught up in the other ones. It just depends what you like to focus on. And you have to find what you like to focus on so that you can master one of them. So, taking these organ systems, this is the outer layer. It's kind of like with our body, it would be the upper body, or like the skin. The skin is protecting the body. It keeps everything warm inside here, or cold, regulates the temperature. It receives all the sensory stuff, if I'm hitting it, if, whatever bacteria or mold or, whatever was out there, this stopped it from getting inside. For us, it's our hairs, our skin, our nails, which is why for doctors, we keep gloves on. We don't want people's bacteria to be absorbed into our hands. And with that said, people used to come to my house a lot and they would ask me why I don't have towels. And what they don't realize is water is one of the most essential parts of our body. We're mostly made up of water. So if everybody came to my house and started using a towel, the same towel, then all that bacteria collects on the towel. And that water that should have been absorbed into your body is now sitting on my towels, which now I'm collecting a bunch of bacteria on the towel, and eventually that bacteria grows, and now my towel is made up of a bunch of potentially bad viruses, or a virus grows because it's sitting there and it's just all of a sudden, oh, I don't know where your hands have been. I don't know what you do with your hands. And this is what I do with mine. I don't know what you do with yours. But I don't want to find out and use the towel. So we don't use towels in my hand for our hand. Like for our hands, we just don't use towels. And we let them air dry because our bodies need to absorb water. And that's how you keep your hands hydrated, man. Some of you out here taking all your hydration away, and I don't know why you guys don't like water that much, because water is really cool, and a lot of our bodies need water. So we don't use towels unless, and sometimes not even on our full bodies. But that was too much information. Anyways, this is the nervous system that I'm now stimulating, all these nerves that are inside of this pumpkin. The nervous system is really important. It can detect stimulation from the environment. So maybe if I was speaking to this pumpkin might hear me and it might like it and it might grow better. And if I start yelling at it, it might not like it. And that's called emotional intelligence for humans. Our ears listen. They are connected to these nervous systems as well. These are the walls that separate it. Our ear is just a wall between the nervous system and, you gotta be careful what you say. Because say somebody starts screaming at you, and now this is one of these, walls connected to the nervous system. If I start hitting it, the vibrational energy starts to hit this. Now, if I don't stimulate it with the right, with the right sounds, this piece of the nervous system, it controls and creates this response to the react. Like it controls responses. So there's a reaction happening all over the place now. The brain system, maybe that's, maybe this is the brain, maybe there's a spinal cord, maybe there's, nerves, maybe there's detection, maybe there's responses that are happening, and all of these are talking to each other. So all of a sudden, you're sending a bunch of noise here, and this is reacting. And what you put here could hurt what's in here. All the energy connects. So that's sound. It's sound energy. And say somebody is constantly screaming at a child. That's going to hurt the heart system somewhere in there. There's a direct connection between outside stimulation and internal effects. The outside world does have the effect on the internal environment of the body. So you have to be careful what you surround yourself with. Now, say, let's go back to the sound. You stimulate yourself to really loud music. Really loud music every time you want to avoid something. Now this sound is constant, but it's not normal to the beat of your heart. Some of the beats are going like this, some are going like this, some are going like this. Well, now you have a muscle right here. This muscle right here is really strong, but it needs to coordinate and generate heat to maintain the homeostasis in the posture, which also keeps your skeletal and muscle and your tendons, all of them are being stimulated by this muscle. It's keeping all of the other stuff strong. Now, if you're putting a new stimulation in, your body is regulating at a certain speed, at a certain temperature, for a certain reason, stimulated by the brain to say, hey, this is what we need to do. Now, the brain is hearing a sound signal that is off from the heart. It needs that heartbeat to tell it exactly how much energy it has. Bum, 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 bum. It's telling you how fast you're breathing in and out with each heart bump. That's why when piano players play, they put a beat to it, because that sound is stimulating the rest of your body. So you have to be very, very careful what sounds you let your body hear. Now, from that muscle, you give your spine, which, let's say down here, this is really hard, right? Maybe we can even turn it around. Or here. Remove some of the guts. Down here is a spine. It's holding everything in a certain place. There are bumps. There are, places where it's saying this bone is going to keep the structure. It's like a house. Certain pillars are placed in certain places so that the whole thing can stand up. Imagine if this wasn't round. How would we have a lid if it's not round? Right? It's got to have a structure. And those muscles, which might be right here, or maybe the side stuff could be muscles, is keeping that structure in that certain place. So, it's in a sense protecting the organs, but it also stores minerals. Those bones had to be made from something. It came from an atom. It came from these cellular phases. So it's holding calcium, and it's making red blood cells and cartilage and bones and joints, all from certain vitamins. And it's keeping these heartbeats strong. And the blood vessels can transport certain things and the material through the body, and it carries oxygen and material to the tissues and disposes carbon and the dioxide waste from this cardiovascular system, which are connected through the nervous system to give it certain stimulants and certain environments that allows the function of the overall body. And when it comes to the cardiovascular system, if the nervous system doesn't tell the cardiovascular system, hey, we need faster, we need a faster heartbeat, we need more oxygen, and we need it faster, or we need this much blood transported in and out. If the heart can't do that, because the brain's giving it wrong signals, then the rest of the body goes off. And when it comes to, like, for example, cholesterol, it's blocking these arteries, which is stopping this in and out function of the blood flow. So how do we reverse cholesterol? Well, what's cholesterol made of? Why do we have cholesterol? What foods do cholesterol come in? Do they come in these nuts over here? Do they come in breads? Seeds? Oils? What about this? What about garlic? Or sugars? Burgers? Where does bad cholesterol come from? Well, you see, if this is the heart, right, in the center, let's say this is the heart right here, and these are the arteries. these arteries need clear flow. But now there's these big gunky stuff in the way. How do we remove that gunk? It's not as easy as removing all the seeds. But when it comes to cholesterol, it's blocking arteries. And, you know, those are still cells. Cholesterol is still made of cells. The question is, what type of cells? What is the cellular makeup of cholesterol? How do the cholesterol cells form? These questions are important because then you're going to realize, could you put something inside the body to break those cells down? We know water washes out the blood. It can clean out the cellular system as long as the water is of the right quality, of course, which may go into waste management. So let's say you have high cholesterol, and it came because you're eating poor foods, and it's high saturated fats. Those high saturated fats inside of your body are not meant to be in the artery. You could have saturated fats, but they should be in fat cells, not in the arteries. And when there's too many, it's kind of like a clogged pipe. Now, if you had a clogged pipe, you have to put something in the pipe to clear them. If the whole pipe is broken, you replace the pipe. If there's something inside the pipe that can be cleared, you add a liquid of some sort, or you inject something to clean it out. So how do we clear a blocked artery from the internal environment before taking a surgical approach that would require complete removal of the artery and replacement? Well, again, you would want to look into the makeup of a cholesterol high saturated cell and determine how to break down the cell and decay and aid the decay and breakdown of a saturated fat. To begin with, your procedure would want to include an observation of why it's blocked. Then ask, of course, how do I break down a saturated fat at the molecular level inside of an artery, microscopic, through addition of some sort of cell or micromolecule that could eat or destroy the saturated fat without becoming an uncontrolled experiment where the introduced micromolecule goes out of control to the point where it takes out saturated fats that might be needed inside the organ systems. And so, taking that perspective, you could do that research. Versus unsaturated fats, which, as the word saturated means, if you took something and you overly added it, it would be saturated, which means there's too much of it in a sense. And you can no longer dissolve anymore. Versus unsaturated, which means the fat is healthy and you can keep adding more of it. Like, for example, if I'm not sure what the content of this pumpkin's walls, saturated or unsaturated fat, is, but I'm sure it's much healthier than that of, like, let's say, processed cheddar cheese. So the regulation of getting rid of those cholesterols could also come from, the endocrine system, which controls the hormones and your glands and your thyroid glands and your pancreas, adrenaline, and, your ovaries and your testers. So in the endocrine system, those messages are being sent back and forth with the hormones, and it tells us, how much you should be exercising. So suddenly when you haven't exercised for a while and you're like, oh my God, that's right, I have to be healthy. Or, some sort of emergency happens and you have to all of a sudden get across town because somebody's dying, or you have to be at the hospital. Your adrenaline kicks in and it tells you, start moving quickly, go faster, and there's a whole entire reaction that's happening in your nervous system, in your endocrine system, and then your muscles start moving faster, and then your skeletal muscle, it's got a bunch of muscles keeping it strong, and your cardiovascular, your heart starts to beat faster, and all of a sudden your body's functioning at a higher rate. Maybe you start sweating because you're moving so fast, and that is essentially how you might decrease the cholesterol in your arteries. You don't want to move too fast because it could cause, some sort of further circular problems like, oh gosh, what am I thinking? It could cause increased heart rate, which could lead to high blood pressure because you have so much pressure on your blood and it's moving so fast that the regulation is, it's kind of like if let's say this is my blood cells, and it usually moves at the speed of one seed gets dropped into the system at a time. Okay, gets back into the system one at a time. Now all of a sudden I start moving faster, and these cells inside of my body are moving faster and faster and faster, and all of a sudden they're flowing, and now I have too many seeds inside my pumpkin. That's your blood. High blood pressure. And you can also break it down further and ask what type of cells are good, which ones are bad. How do we determine, viruses? How do we determine, how do we determine what this is? What are each cells? Which one is white blood cells? Which ones are red blood cells? Which ones are, hemoglobin? Which ones are... There's so many different types of cells. There are so many different ways to look at them. And then you have to ask the DNA structure of each, A, B, C, D, or, which letter combines with which DNA strand, and how do we determine, how do we determine that connection? How do we determine which goes where? All of these things help us in better understanding diseases and how they all connect. Like, for example, Alzheimer's disease. Let's look at that one. This is a really key, not a lot of people, there hasn't been, I believe, a fully proven cure for Alzheimer's disease. But, if you look at most patients of Alzheimer's disease, I'm going to guarantee, I can't guarantee, but my hypothesis at this point would be most people with Alzheimer's disease, it's their way of life. So, the long-term effect, we know that, let's say somebody's on their computer all day, they have a higher chance of increased radiation, which means that increased radiation is going to give them more mutations in their cells potentially. And I'm just going to take a second for my personal self because I am one of those people. Yeah. I think Alzheimer's disease is a mental choice. I think people choose to forget. Certain people don't want to, people have lived a life and they don't want to remember. And our spirit tells us to forget it. Versus maybe dementia. I think that's an external trauma that was unhealed. So people have harder times associating with others. And there's OCD, obsessive compulsion disorder. There's also obsessive need to clean, organize, have control. People who lose control in their external environment have a higher tendency of OCD. They don't feel like they can do anything, so they try to have control of what is around them. Loss of hope. Then there's depression. Lack of enjoyment in one's life due to if I was my hands are inside somebody's body right now. A lot of people who want to be doctors you can't be thinking about yourself when your hands are inside. I can't sit here and start crying about my life. I can't sit here and say, I all of a sudden thinking about a past relative. You have to detach. It's not for everybody. There has to be no emotions, and emotional intelligence is important because not everybody can be a doctor just because they're emotionally able to detach. Some people are so emotionless that they have no sympathy. And, in a sense, the patient on your table has to be just a pumpkin. You're just degutting a pumpkin, right? Wrong. It's still a person. It's still somebody's family member. You have to know when to turn your emotions on versus when to turn them off. And when your hands are inside, your emotions are off. With awareness. You have to listen to your emotions without letting them take control. Each one of these may represent an emotional connection to something, let's say, negative. You start to think about something in your life that you don't enjoy very much, and you let it grow. if I let this grow as something negative, it'll turn into a tumor, and it'll grow bigger, and it'll grow bigger, and it'll become a bigger and bigger and bigger problem. My pumpkin is the problem right now. For example, if I had moved the pumpkin as it was growing in this phase, then it would not have this little mark here. It would be a healthy, wholesome pumpkin. This is not a healthy, wholesome pumpkin. It has this. Now, I can either focus on what's wrong with it, or I can do my job and fix what I can. Similarly, the patient on your table may not always be somebody you like. And you have to show sympathy. You have to show empathy. You have to show compassion, whether you like them or not. Whether they outdo you, whether they make more money than you, whether they make less money than you, whether they are kind, whether they have a relationship with you from the past or not, there is nothing you are supposed to do about the past or your future relationship with them. There's nothing. It's not your job. Your job is not to sit there and think about who the pumpkin is. Your job is how to fix and help and send on their way. Yet understand that they might be back. Maybe I'll get the next pumpkin in their family, and I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with them coming back. That is not easy to do. Say the person's mean to you. Maybe my pumpkin hit me on the head. Does that mean when my hand is inside of the pumpkin, I'm going to, tear apart all of these aggressively? No. I still have to take the tools that I'm given pull out the parts I don't want, and make the cut for the best benefit of the pumpkin. And even if I'm thinking something negative, my job is not to worry about myself. My job is to worry about how to make the inside of this pumpkin healthy. And if these are all viruses and negative blood cells and poor infections and diseases and cancer cells, I need to remove that. That is my only priority. I don't care what's going on besides that. And I have to do it in a way where I know that I did everything I could. Similarly, I'm taking a biology class, and I need to get better grades. I do not believe and value electronics. I think it takes me away from the present moment. I think it is against who I am as a person. I don't like electronics. And for some reason, our education system thinks that there's value in more electronics to take us further away from each moment. And you see, when you time people, if if I was inside of somebody's body and I tried to rush it, that person is going to be dead. The objective of healers is to understand the full concept and workup of the patient. What is their history? What is their livelihood? Do they want the care I'm offering? Any past injuries? Any allergies? Any emotional trauma? Any family members that they like or dislike? If my patient's sitting on their bed and they're trying to recover, and a family member that they dislike shows up, and they had a heart problem that I'm trying to resolve, and they just came out of surgery, and this parent or friend or grandparent, if someone has caused them trauma, they're going to start panicking the second they see that family member. And my job as a doctor isn't just to know how much blood goes in and out of the vessels, or how much the blood pressure is, or how many beats per minute, or how many, what type of medicine am I supposed to administer in order to do the panel shocks. My job is to also know that when I get a message that says there's family member, I say who? Who is walking through that door? I don't care if it's their mom or their dad. If my patient would be traumatized by them, they are not welcome inside of the healing room until my patient is fully recovered. That's how you be a good doctor. Now, there are some doctors, I put a quotation marks around that, who think it's okay to try and fix people that they do not know fully. I myself have gone through this. I had a friend who tried to do a research project on me, and I'm sure she thought she was going to get somewhere with that until she realized I was smart too. And I believe they were assessing relationships, and I am going to say this because I have the right to say without expressing the who, that it is not only morally incorrect, but medically incorrect to test on a subject without their permission. The law states that if you are going to do a test or run a test, subjects must be aware that you are testing on them. And if you do not let them know at the time period where you begin the test, whether it's in high school, whether it's in college, whether it's at your place of work, or otherwise going into their household, whether it's in the frame of religion, whether it's in the frame of psychology, whether it's in food safety, whether it's anything socially, social media wise, all of that is included as a test. And to administer a test without the permission of the person and letting them know that it is a test is illegal. We should be teaching that first. How do you treat a person? And I'm not saying with tools, I'm talking about with conversation. Do you encourage people? Do you know when you're not supposed to fix somebody and let them be? Do you know how to properly speak to an employer that you want to leave a job? Do you know how to be respectful? Do you know how to remove your attitude? Do you know how to apologize when you reacted out of attitude rather than out of gratitude? Do you know how to apologize? Do you know how to forgive? These are also what doctors are supposed to do. This is not... The framework of being a doctor is taught very strangely, in my opinion. And I believe the educational board could do better on this. And maybe I should send it a pitch, but the emotional intelligence of our species, when this diminishes, our health overall also diminishes. You can look into the different spirits and spiritual healing and how this relates to bodily health. It goes into the category of natural sciences. So, what have we gone through in biology class so far has been immeasurably valuable. Knowledge can never be measured and fully valued because knowledge lives with us beyond the realms of the human body, I believe. Maybe that's just my crazy belief. I think that we can hold on to knowledge generationally, which is why it's important to learn from your elders and not abandon them. For example, let's say your mom kicks you out of the house and you're on the street or something. Our job as the next generation is to heal from that and then go back, forgive them, and then teach them based on what we learn as what would be morally correct in comparison to just dropping us on the street, based on what we learned through diverse experiences from other families. Why are divorce rates in India lower than America? Why anyway, this pumpkin no longer has its tumors and bad stuff in it. These guts need to be dissected over here, removed, and transported to the next hospital. Life saved. Didn't really cover much of the topics I was going to, but apparently salmon is good for anxiety. I didn't know that. Anyway, signing off.